Imagine spending years, literally years, meticulously reverse engineering the American economy just to find the secret to national growth.
Right, like trying to crack a code.
Exactly. And then imagine raising all this international capital, moving across continents, and hand pressing 30,000 concrete blocks
Yep, by hand.
by hand to build this state-of-the-art university in West Africa. I mean, a massive multi-million-dollar vision designed to bring medicine, law, and technology to a rural town.
It's an incredibly grand ambition.
It really is. And then just imagine having that entire monumental endeavor brought to a dead, grinding halt.
And for the most unexpected reason.
Right. Because someone confiscated your wheelbarrows.
Yeah, it is the ultimate collision of high-level grand ambition and incredibly localized, grounded friction.
Welcome to the deep dive. We have, a truly fascinating journey for you today.
We really do.
We are looking at a single, incredibly potent source text. It's a deeply personal and historical account titled The Fate of Arizona International University.
And it's just such a rich document.
It is. And our mission today is to unpack this sweeping story of cross-continental ambition, the universal power of education, and what actually happens when a philanthropic dream collides with, unexpected traditional, cultural, and legal realities.
What's fascinating here is that we aren't just looking at a dry business case study.
No, definitely not.
This source text, it operates on two distinct levels. On one level, it is a deeply personal memoir. It's infused with a family's love, generational duty, and the burden of honoring a legacy.
Yeah, a really heavy legacy.
Right. But on the other level, it is a rigorous and, frankly, cautionary masterclass in international project management.
Yeah.
I mean, it exposes the absolute fragility of building across different legal and cultural systems.
And we really want you, the listener, to put yourself in the shoes of the people building this, because this isn't just a story about a building,
No, it's about the people.
It's about the incredible, sometimes agonizing lengths people will go to in order to give something back to their home. So, okay, let's unpack this from the very genesis of the idea.
Let's do it.
The author of our text and their brother, a man named Isaac Baafi Amoako, who was a U.S. Air Force veteran, they sat down and essentially tried to solve a massive macroeconomic puzzle.
And we need to establish right away that the text refers to Isaac as being of blessed memory.
Yes, which is so important. It fundamentally shifts how we have to look at this entire story.
It does. It establishes that Isaac has passed away.
Right. So the project we are about to explore, it isn't just a business venture or some standard nonprofit. It carries the emotional weight of a deceased sibling's legacy.
It raises the stakes from the very first page.
Absolutely.
Exactly. When a project becomes a memorial, the tolerance for failure just drops to zero.
Yeah, you can't just walk away from it.
No, you can't. And the way these two brothers approach their initial ambition is brilliantly analytical. The text states they performed a well-thought-out analysis of the extraordinary developments in the United States of America.
Which is such an interesting phrase. They didn't just look at the U.S. and say, well, wow, they have a lot of money, let's go build something.
Right, they didn't just guess.
They actively treated national success as a variable that could be isolated.
They did. They sought out what the text calls prominent citizens to ask them to identify the main variables that had buttressed such impressive economic and social growth in the U.S.
Wait, I want to challenge that approach for a second. 'Cause
Okay.
if you walk up to 10 different economists or historians and ask them why America is successful, you are going to get 50 different answers.
Oh, without a doubt.
You'll hear about geography, natural resources, post-World War II industrial capacity, the interstate highway system, immigration. How do you actually isolate a single variable from all that noise?
That is a highly valid pushback. I mean, the reality of macroeconomics is, of course, a massive tapestry of interwoven factors.
Right.
But the brothers weren't conducting an academic peer-reviewed study to publish in a journal. They were conducting a targeted qualitative survey to find an actionable lever.
Okay, so they were looking for something they could actually use.
Exactly. They wanted to know what the human catalyst was. Geography and post-war industrial capacity. Well, those are historical and geographic luck.
You can't export those.
Right. You can't box up the interstate highway system and ship it to Ghana.
Ah, okay. So they are looking for the replicable code. Think about it like reverse engineering a successful tech startup. If you want to know how they did it, you ask the founders.
That's a perfect analogy. The software, not the hardware.
Precisely. These brothers literally surveyed prominent U.S. citizens to find the code to national growth. They are looking for the ultimate multiplier.
And when they surveyed these people, the text notes that the responses they received were overwhelming.
It wasn't a fractured consensus.
Not at all. The data pointed them in one very clear direction.
Education. That was the cheat code.
Education. It is the engine that drives innovation, which drives policy, which drives economic stability.
But, why did this specific answer resonate so deeply with them? I mean, everyone knows education is good, but these brothers decided to essentially dedicate their lives and finances to exporting this concept.
We have to look at the psychology of the diaspora.
Okay, unpack that.
When individuals leave their country of origin, especially someone like Isaac, who served in the U.S. Air Force, integrating deeply into American institutional structures, they experience a completely different civic and economic operating system.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There is often a profound, burning desire to bring the secrets of success back home. The text actually says they wanted to help their people move forward in a similar way.
So they weren't trying to extract wealth from Ghana. They were trying to inject the ultimate catalyst for wealth creation back into it.
The logic is unassailable, really. If education is the foundational pillar of America's extraordinary development, then building an educational institution in Ghana is the most direct, highly leveraged way to trigger that same kind of development for their own community.
It's an incredibly noble yet highly rationalized approach to philanthropy.
It is.
Which brings us to the actual execution, because it's one thing to have an idea, right? How do you go from a philosophical realization about the power of education to actually laying physical bricks?
Well, they decide they're going to establish a university in Ghana.
Right. But they made a geographic choice that honestly completely caught me off guard. They chose the Kwahu area, and specifically a smaller town.
The text explicitly states they did this so their efforts would have a greater impact.
And I am struggling to see the logic there.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, if you are building a massive university, don't you want it in the biggest market possible? Why not put it in Accra, the capital city?
You'd think so, yeah.
You have international airports, existing infrastructure, massive population density. Putting it in a rural, smaller town seems like making things intentionally difficult.
It does seem counterintuitive if you were thinking purely in terms of immediate enrollment numbers or convenience. But let's examine the mechanics of impact.
Okay, let's do it.
If you drop a new university into a sprawling metropolis like Accra, which already has major institutions like the University of Ghana, your new school is just an addition to an existing skyline.
It's a drop in the bucket.
Yes, exactly. It gets absorbed. But if you place a university in a smaller town in the Kwahu area, you aren't just building a school. You are initiating a massive, localized economic shockwave.
Like dropping a boulder into a small pond?
Exactly. Think about the secondary and tertiary economies a university requires. It isn't just classrooms.
Right. The students need places to live.
Students need housing, which creates a real estate boom. They need to eat, which transforms local agriculture and creates restaurants.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Transportation, internet cafes, laundry services, bookstores.
A university in a small town completely transforms the ecosystem. It elevates the literacy rate, it creates a highly skilled localized workforce, and crucially, it reverses the brain drain.
Because usually young people have to leave the village to find opportunities in the city.
Right. So the impact here is absolute and structural.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because as much as they are focused on this localized rural impact in Ghana, the legal genesis of the school is bizarre.
It is quite a pivot.
They registered the entity as Arizona International University with the Arizona Secretary of State in the USA. Why? Why would you register an entity in the American Southwest when your entire operational footprint is going to be in West Africa?
This is actually a masterstroke in international project structuring, and it reveals a really deep understanding of how capital flows.
Okay, walk me through that. Because to me, it just looks like extra paperwork and international tax headaches. Does an Arizona LLC actually give you any legal protection in Ghana?
Legally protecting the physical assets in Ghana.
Yeah.
No, an Arizona registration does not supersede Ghanaian property law. But that's not what it's for.
Then what is it doing?
It is purely about establishing a bridge of institutional credibility and financial infrastructure.
Ah, for the donors.
Precisely. Remember, this project is going to require massive funding. If you approach prominent U.S. citizens or American philanthropic foundations and ask them to donate millions of dollars, You cannot just hand them a wire routing number for a local bank in rural Ghana.
Right, the friction is just too
The
high.
perceived risk is way too high.
They want to see a proper 501(c)(3. They want an employer identification number. They want to know they can write it off on their U.S. taxes. And, they want to know the entity is subject to U.S. financial transparency laws.
You nail it. Registering with the Arizona Secretary of State creates a recognized, auditable, highly structured legal entity in the United States.
It creates a safe harbor for American capital.
Exactly. The donors give to the Arizona entity, which feels safe, predictable, and heavily regulated, and then that entity, controlled by the brothers, strategically deploys the capital to the fiscal project in Ghana. It bridges the trust gap.
That is brilliant. It's like they are building two foundations simultaneously. A bureaucratic, legal foundation in the Arizona desert, and a physical concrete foundation in Kwahu.
But as you pointed out, a piece of paper from the Arizona Secretary of State doesn't magically manifest a campus.
No, it definitely doesn't.
To turn that legal potential into kinetic physical energy, you need to mobilize people on the ground.
And this is where the story shifts gears completely. It goes from macroeconomic theory and bureaucratic filings to a deeply personal, familial deployment.
The human element comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The author and his wife, Rose Amoako, travel to Ghana. And upon arriving in Nkwatia, Kwahu, they meet the author's mother, Amanyame. And she asks a question that basically defines the rest of the project.
Amanyame is incredibly elated by the news, but her first reaction isn't just blind celebration. She asks, what knowledge are we going to impart to our students?
It's such a brilliant, cutting question.
It really gets to the core of it.
Right. She doesn't ask how much it's going to cost. She doesn't ask what the buildings will look like or who the architect is. She cuts straight through the logistics and asks for the soul of the project. What is the actual substance of this dream?
And the author doesn't hesitate. He had already pre-planned the answer in discussions with his brother Isaac prior to the trip.
Okay, and what was the curriculum they proposed?
It was medicine, law, technology, pharmacology, and liberal arts.
Okay, I have to stop you there, because when I first read that list, I thought, well, that sounds great. But when you actually break down what it takes to teach those specific subjects, it is bordering on madness for a startup university in a rural town.
It is staggering ambition. We really need to dissect exactly what those disciplines require.
Please do.
If they had just said liberal arts, that is highly achievable. You need classrooms, desks, a decent library, and knowledgeable professors. It is a low infrastructure discipline.
But they didn't stop there. They said medicine and pharmacology.
Right, and you cannot teach medicine or pharmacology with just a whiteboard. You were talking about wet labs.
Yeah, totally different ballgame.
You were talking about importing highly sensitive microscopes, centrifuges, and chemical reagents. You need climate-controlled storage for volatile substances. You need biohazard disposal systems.
Which is incredibly complex anywhere, let alone in a rural town.
Exactly. In a rural town, this means you likely cannot rely on the municipal power grid alone to keep these things running.
So you need massive commercial backup generators, voltage regulators, water filtration systems just to keep the labs functional.
Exactly. And then you add technology to the list.
Right.
That requires high-speed fiber optic internet connectivity, server rooms, extensive cooling systems for those servers, and constant hardware upgrades.
And law requires a massive, constantly updated physical and digital library of jurisprudence, connections to the judicial system for clerkships. I mean, the mother's question forces us to realize that this isn't just a school building.
No, it's so much more.
They are proposing to build a highly complex, hyper-expensive, integrated infrastructural marvel from absolute scratch.
It is the equivalent of trying to build a NASA control center in a location that might only have basic municipal infrastructure. But what is truly remarkable is the family's reaction to this scale of ambition.
They don't flinch. The text mentions the author's sister, Janet Baafi Amoako, and her husband, Kwahu, were thrilled.
Yeah, thrilled. Not intimidated.
And then Rose's mother, Abba Sam, travels all the way from Winneba just to assist with the land acquisition mission.
This is a crucial element of the narrative. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we often think of large-scale international development as being driven by faceless NGOs, corporate boards, and specialized procurement officers.
Right, people in suits.
Here, the corporate board is the extended family. It is a matriarchal and familial support system swinging into action.
And for anyone listening who has ever tried to organize a simple family vacation, Think about the logistical and emotional nightmare of just getting 8 people to agree on a restaurant.
It's nearly impossible.
It is.
Yeah.
Here you have an entire extended family, brothers, wives, mothers, sisters, in-laws, all instantly aligning behind a multi-million-dollar vision of building wet labs and server rooms in Kwahu.
It demonstrates a profound alignment of generational values. The brothers' modern analytical preparation, discussing the curriculum beforehand, perfectly meets the mother's immediate practical curiosity about the nature of the knowledge being imparted.
It's a beautiful alignment.
The generational consensus is absolute. There is no internal friction.
Which is good because they are going to need every ounce of that unity for what comes next. So they have the curriculum, they have the family aligned, they have the Arizona LLC. Now they need dirt.
They need the land.
They need a physical footprint. And this brings us to the diplomacy of land acquisition.
And acquiring land in rural Ghana is fundamentally mechanically different from acquiring land in the United States. It requires navigating a completely different operating system.
Right. In Arizona, if you want land, you go on a real estate website, you find a commercial lot, you hire a broker, you sign a purchase agreement, and a title company handles escrow.
It's very sterile.
It is entirely transactional, and you never even have to look the seller in the eye. But in Ghana, the search begins in Abene, Kwahu. They meet the Queen Mother and her elders.
The text notes these were mutually beneficial conversations. And then they proceed to Pipis to meet the then chief, Nana Okayer Ampadu II, and his elders.
And this is where I need you to explain the mechanics to me, because it feels very foreign to a Western real estate mindset.
Sure.
The chief agrees to provide the land, but the author notes, I visited them just about every day until they told us to come and pay for the sliver of land they had allocated for the project. Why every day?
That's a great question.
If they agreed to it, why not just write the check and move on? Why the daily pilgrimage?
Because you have to understand the concept of customary land tenure, often referred to as stool lands in Ghana.
Stool lands?
Yes. In many of these traditional areas, the land is not owned in a fee-simple, absolute sense by an individual the way you might own a suburban plot in the U.S. The land belongs to the community, to the ancestors, and to the unborn generations.
Wow. Okay, so who actually controls it?
The chief, occupying the traditional stool, acts as the ultimate custodian or trustee of that land. He doesn't own it as private property. He manages it on behalf of the people.
I see.
Therefore, allocating a piece of this ancestral land to an outsider, even a diaspora family, is a deeply spiritual, communal, and political act.
So it's not just a commercial transaction, it's an integration into the community.
Precisely. You cannot rush a custodian. The daily visits are the actual currency.
It's like the ultimate form of networking, right?
Exactly. You are proving your patience, your respect for the traditional hierarchy, and your genuine commitment to the area. By showing up every single day, the author is demonstrating that he isn't just some arrogant American flying in with a checkbook expecting everyone to bow to his timeline.
He is submitting to their rhythm. He is building relational capital. You are investing in the relationship before you invest in the dirt.
And that completely explains how the payment is eventually handled. Because when it's finally time to pay, it is not a quiet bank transfer.
Oh, it's a huge event.
The text is very specific. The entire community, including the elders and the city administrators, was present when we made payment.
It is an act of immense, deliberate public transparency.
In a system that historically relies heavily on oral tradition and communal memory rather than just digital databases, the physical witnessing of the transaction is the binding agent.
Right. Everyone has to see it happen.
The elders are there to witness the traditional transfer. The community is there to acknowledge their new neighbors.
And the city administrators are there too, which I find fascinating. Why invite the modern municipal government to a traditional land payment?
This is the family being incredibly shrewd. They are recognizing that they are operating in a dual legal environment.
Two systems at once.
You have the customary law governed by the chief and the statutory municipal law governed by the state. By having the city administrators present at the traditional payment ceremony, the family is trying to lock down the legitimacy of the transaction across both operating systems.
They want everyone on the exact same page.
Yes. They want to make sure there's no confusion later on.
It seems bulletproof. The moment it is done, the author travels to Ninkaka the very next day just to get a phone signal to call his brother Isaac in the U.S.
A very emotional moment, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Isaac expresses his appreciation and pledges his unwavering support. You can feel the transatlantic triumph in that phone call. The land is secured. The vision has a home.
And with the land secured, the abstract phase ends, and the brutal physical reality begins.
This brings us to the actual construction, the sweat equity. The pace suddenly goes from this slow, methodical daily diplomacy to an absolute sprint. The text states they built the foundation of the school building within 6 months.
6 months to clear land, dig trenches, pour footings, and establish a foundation for a multi-story university building designed to house heavy science labs is a blistering pace.
It's incredibly fast.
It requires military-level logistical coordination.
But pouring a foundation of that size burns through cash rapidly. And this highlights the dual financial engines of the project. Both brothers started aggressively saving their personal funds.
Right, using their own money first.
At the same time, they launched a campaign to secure financial backing from philanthropic sources in the U.S.
And notice the contrasting timelines the text provides here. It says the U.S. philanthropic campaign was a formidable success, but it explicitly adds that it took a long time to reach the target amount.
Right, you have this massive friction discrepancy. In Ghana, they are moving earth and pouring concrete at breakneck speed. But in the U.S., dealing with the Arizona LLC, courting donors, proving viability, that takes a long time.
It's a completely different rhythm.
It's like they were driving a car where the front wheels are spinning at 100 miles an hour and the back wheels are stuck in the mud.
It perfectly illustrates the reality of grassroots international development. The initial momentum is almost always funded by the founder's own painfully accumulated savings, the family acting as the spark plug. The institutional capital, the heavy fuel needed to actually finish the building, takes agonizingly long to arrive.
But eventually it does arrive, because in 2022, they initiate a massive phase of construction. And this detail absolutely stopped me in my tracks. They contacted artisans from northern Ghana to manufacture 30,000 building blocks.
We really need to slow down and dissect the sheer physical magnitude of that single sentence.
Please. Because 30,000 blocks sounds like a lot, but I don't think my brain fully registered what that actually entails. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Think about the scale of this.
It's massive.
Why not just go to a local hardware megastore equivalent and buy 30,000 blocks? Why are they manufacturing them?
Because in many rural development contexts, a centralized megastore that can instantly supply 30,000 high-grade, load-bearing concrete blocks does not exist.
It's just not an option.
The supply chain cannot handle that kind of localized spike in demand. If you buy up all the blocks in the region, you disrupt the local housing market, and the quality control might vary wildly from batch to batch.
And if you are building two-story wet labs, you cannot risk a crumbling foundation because you bought a bad batch of blocks from a roadside vendor.
Exactly. So you have to internalize the supply chain. You bring the factory to the site. They brought specialized artisans down from northern Ghana. And think about the logistics of just doing that.
You have to arrange transportation for these artisans. You have to secure housing for them in the Kwahu area for months. You have to feed them.
Yes. And then consider the raw materials. To hand press 30,000 blocks on site, you need mountains of specific grade sand. You need hundreds, maybe thousands of bags of Portland cement, which has to be kept meticulously dry in a tropical climate.
Which is no small feat.
And crucially, you need water. Massive amounts of fresh water to mix the cement and continuously cure the blocks over several days. You might have to bore a well just to service the block-making operation.
It is a massive industrial operation just to create the basic building blocks of the project. And think about the physical labor. Each of those 30,000 blocks is individually mixed, pressed in a mold, turned out, and watered by hand under the West African sun.
That is the physical manifestation of the phrase brick by brick.
It is the literal definition of sweat equity.
And it highlights a profoundly positive side effect of this project. Even before a single student is enrolled, the university is fulfilling its mission of economic impact. The international U.S. philanthropy and the family's personal savings are funneling directly into the local economy.
Right, because they also hired a local contractor, Mr. Eric Kofi Ba, and he brought his own crew of 15 men to begin the actual build.
So you have the artisans from the north, Eric Kofi Ba's crew of 15, the local food vendors feeding them, the truck drivers hauling the sand. This is massive job creation.
The university is already operating as an economic engine.
It is.
The blueprint is becoming a physical, undeniable reality. They have the land. They have manufactured 30,000 bespoke blocks. They have the crews. They are actively building a 2-story classroom building specifically designed with 12 study rooms and those highly complex science labs. Phase 1 is nearly complete. The momentum is a runaway train.
And then the train hits a solid, immovable wall.
We've reached the roadblock, and this is where the story pivots from an inspiring logistical triumph into an incredibly painful lesson in systemic fragility.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
As Phase 1 nears completion, a pivotal, tragic event occurs. The original chief, Nana Okier Ampadu II, the exact man the author visited every single day, the man who publicly allocated the land, passes away.
The death of a traditional leader is a profound tectonic shift for any community. It is the closing of one era and the immediate uncertain opening of another.
A new chief takes over, and very shortly after, this new chief visits the construction site. And abruptly, completely out of nowhere, he stops the project.
Just like that. The momentum of 30,000 hand-pressed blocks is frozen.
And it isn't just a verbal warning. It isn't a politely worded letter from a lawyer. The new chief takes direct physical action. Their construction equipment is seized, and the text specifically details what was taken: wheelbarrows, spades, and others.
The symbolic contrast in that detail is incredibly stark.
It really is. It's almost absurd. You have this grand transatlantic vision. You have a legally registered Arizona LLC. You have massive U.S. philanthropic backing.
Yeah.
You are building complex architecture to teach medicine and pharmacology. And the entire multi-million-dollar machine is brought to a dead halt by the confiscation of basic hand tools, wheelbarrows, and spades.
It is a jarring reality check. But to truly understand why this happened, we have to go back to our earlier discussion about the two operating systems, the customary law and the statutory law.
Okay, yes, explain this to me, because I am furious on behalf of the family. We just established that they did everything right.
They did.
They visited every day, they paid in public, the whole community witnessed it, the city administrators were there. Wait, an agreement witnessed by city administrators can just be paused like that.
It really makes you wonder about the intersection of municipal law and traditional authority.
How on earth can a new chief just walk onto the site and take their tools? Doesn't the public agreement bind the new chief?
In a Western corporate context, yes. If you sign a contract with the CEO of a company, and that CEO dies or resigns, the new CEO is legally bound by the existing contracts of the corporation. The entity survives the individual.
Right, it's continuous.
But this raises an important question about systemic transitions of power. In many traditional chieftaincy systems, the authority is heavily vested in the individual occupying the school at that specific moment. When a chief dies, the slate is often culturally, if not legally, wiped clean in the eyes of the new administration. The new chief is the new custodian of the ancestral land.
So the new sheriff and town dynamic is dialed up to 11.
Exactly. A new leader will very often systematically review all past land allocations made by their predecessor. They do this to assert their own authority, to ensure the agreements align with their new vision for the community, or sometimes to renegotiate terms they feel were unfavorable.
But what about the city administrators? They were witnesses. Why can't the family just call the mayor or the police and say, hey, we have a deal, give us our wheelbarrows back?
Because of the deep complexity of overlapping jurisdictions. While the state police and municipal administrators hold statutory power, interfering directly with a chief's enforcement of customary land rights is incredibly politically sensitive.
Oh, I see.
It risks sparking a massive jurisdictional crisis between the modern state and the traditional authority. In rural areas, the traditional authority often holds far more day-to-day sway over the local population than a city bureaucrat. The administrators are likely paralyzed by the political optics of intervening.
So the two operating systems are essentially crashing. They are freezing the computer.
That is the perfect analogy. And the family is caught right in the middle of the system failure. The author obviously tries to resolve it through the methods that worked before. He writes, upon hearing this, I called the chief to discuss it with him, but it fell on deaf ears.
That is devastating. The slow, patient diplomacy that built so much relational capital with the previous chief, the daily visits, the mutual respect, is suddenly completely worthless. It doesn't transfer.
It is the ultimate cautionary tale for international development. You could have all the capital, all the philanthropic backing, the best architectural blueprints, and the most noble intentions in the world.
Yeah.
But if the local human systems of authority shift unpredictably, your physical project is entirely vulnerable.
The author writes, I could not fathom what had just happened. And you can feel the sheer, unadulterated shock in those words. Imagine the psychological whiplash.
Has to be maddening.
You spend years analyzing U.S. economic variables. You grieve your veteran brother. You raise money for years. You hire 15 men. You pour foundations. You hand make 30,000 blocks in the blazing sun. And the whole thing stops because your spades are locked up and the new guy won't answer your phone calls.
It's a paralyzing moment. The traditional avenue of resolution has completely shut them out. The customary operating system has rejected them.
So, faced with an unfathomable roadblock, what is the recourse? If the traditional system fails you, you are forced to forcefully pivot to the modern statutory system.
The arena of conflict completely shifts.
Having absolutely no other choice to save their life's work, the author files a formal lawsuit in the Impreso Circuit Court.
This represents a massive escalation. Moving from customary negotiation to a formal circuit court means they're officially asking the modern statutory legal system of Ghana to overrule the traditional chieftaincy's action.
And once again, we see the family consortium mobilize. The text notes that the author's sister, Abina Dufi, initially led this legal effort. But think about the emotional and financial devastation here. The text states this litigation has dragged on for more than 4 years.
4 years. Let's put that in perspective. The entire foundation for a two-story science building was poured in 6 months. The legal battle over the basic right to continue building has taken over 4 years, and it is still ongoing.
And during those 4 years, what happens to the site? The 30,000 blocks are sitting in the elements.
It's degrading.
The rebar is rusting in the tropical humidity. The trenches are filling with rainwater. The physical dream is slowly degrading while the legal system grinds away.
And it is incurring, as the text mildly puts it, considerable legal fees and other incidental costs. This is the hidden tragedy of the roadblock.
The bleeding out of funds.
Exactly. The funds that were painstakingly saved by the brothers, the capital raised through the formidable success of the U.S. philanthropic campaign resources that were specifically earmarked for microscopes, for textbooks, for server racks, are now being continuously bled out into the Impreso Circuit Court to pay lawyers.
It is heartbreaking when you contrast it with the original momentum. This project was born out of sheer joyful enthusiasm. We had elated mothers, excited sisters, massive community appreciation in the streets, and now it is bogged down in half a decade of sterile procedural litigation.
But the text also reveals something incredibly inspiring about the human spirit here. The family structure doesn't shatter under the pressure. It simply adapts to the new battlefield.
Yes, the family consortium pivots yet again. The text lists a new vanguard: Brother Paul Amoako Konadu, nephew Judah Kofi Ansa, and cousin elder Kwasi Osei. They are now the ones representing the family in court.
And the author gives them a very specific, highly elevated title. He calls them the champions of the legal battle.
I love that phrase. It's so powerful. It honors their sacrifice. Because the family members who originally gathered to joyfully scout land and debate the merits of liberal arts versus medicine have been forced to morph into a hardened legal defense team.
It's a total transformation of their role.
The family remains the constant stabilizing force.
The type of endurance required for this phase is fundamentally different from the physical endurance required for the construction phase. Manufacturing blocks requires muscle, logistics, and water.
Right.
Sustaining a 4-year, seemingly endless legal battle against a traditional authority requires immense psychological stamina, deep pockets for legal fees, and an absolutely unwavering belief in the core mission.
The battlefield has shifted from the muddy construction site in Pipis to the sterile benches of the circuit court, but the family's commitment remains absolute.
The final line of the source text is a testament to that sheer will. Despite absolutely everything, the death of their brother Isaac, the death of the original chief, the confiscated tools, the deaf ears, the rusting rebar, the 4 years of hemorrhaging legal fees, the author declares, we are very hopeful that we will prevail.
It is a remarkable statement of enduring, almost defiant optimism. The vision of Arizona International University refuses to be extinguished by bureaucratic or traditional friction.
It really refuses to die.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's recap this incredible, sprawling arc. We started with two brothers looking at the root causes of American economic dominance. That highly abstract inquiry turned into a massive, cross-continental family mobilization.
It required bridging the legal architecture of an Arizona LLC with the customary stool lands of rural Ghana. It physically manifested in the creation of an international supply chain, the hand-pressing of 30,000 blocks, and a blistering 6-month construction sprint.
only to culminate in a deeply complex, incredibly frustrating clash between the traditional realities of chieftaincy transitions and the modern machinery of the circuit court system, all triggered by the absurd confiscation of wheelbarrows and spades.
If you are listening to this, whether you're trying to build a university in West Africa, launch a tech startup in your garage, enact policy change in your local city council, or simply navigate a highly complex family dynamic, this story offers a profound, unavoidable lesson.
And what is that ultimate takeaway?
It proves that having a pure motive is not enough. Identifying the correct variable like education is not enough. Even securing the necessary capital and executing the physical logistics flawlessly is never enough.
The blueprint is never the territory.
Right. To truly build something lasting, you must possess the deep structural resilience to navigate the unpredictable, often entirely irrational human systems that govern the very ground you are trying to build upon.
It brings us right back to the beginning. The world isn't clean engineering. It is incredibly murky, and sometimes it is deeply unfair. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final lingering idea to mull over.
I'd love to hear it.
The original stated goal of the Amoako brothers was to impart knowledge to help people move forward, right? They wanted to build classrooms to teach medicine, law, technology, and pharmacology.
That was the dream.
But considering this massive, painful 4-year struggle in the Impreso Circuit Court, is it possible that Arizona International University has actually already begun teaching its very first unintentional masterclass in Ghanaian legal mechanics, jurisdictional friction, and administrative resilience long before a single classroom door has even opened?
That is a deeply compelling perspective. The struggle itself and the family's public endurance of it has become the first curriculum.
Exactly. Keep that in mind the next time you face an unfathomable roadblock in your own grand vision. The roadblock might just be the lesson. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.